What if one careless word could burn down $3 billion? That's not a figure of speech. That's exactly what happened one night in Manhattan inside a restaurant so polished, the air itself smelled like money. It was the kind of place where powerful men made empires over dessert. And working the floor that night was a young woman most of them barely noticed, Elena Cruz, 24, dark hair, pulled into a neat bun, black dress with a white apron, eyes sharp enough to catch a detail across the room without moving her head. She used to be a star at Columbia, a linguistics student who could juggle 5 languages like it was nothing. Then her father's small business collapsed, his heart gave out, and medical bills crushed the family. Elena traded textbooks for wine lists, lecture halls for late shifts. But she never left her mind behind, she just wore it under an apron. At table 6 sat a man she already knew by reputation. Martin Clay, an old-school billionaire who built his fortune in steel and shipping. He was polite, almost old-fashioned. He called her Miss when he ordered sparkling water, looked her in the eye, even thanked her for describing the specials. Across from him slouched his dinner guest, the real storm in the room, Colt Mercer, a tech CEO who swaggered in late sneakers, cleaner than the linen napkins, a phone buzzing like a second heartbeat on the table. He was pitching Martin a $3 billion partnership, his AI system with Martin's global ports. From the start, Colt treated Elena like background noise. Snapped fingers, waved hands, muttered, "Whatever, just water." He drilled her on the menu like it was a courtroom cross-examination trying to trip her up. She never stumbled, but she felt the knot forming in her chest, because men like him always needed someone to crush. Then came the spill. Barely a splash, a few drops of cold water sliding off a glass perched too close to the edge. It dotted Colt's hand, the one holding his 20-grand phone. And he erupted. "Watch what you're doing, you clumsy idiot." The whole restaurant froze. Forks hovered, conversations died. All eyes on Elena, standing stiff with her tray. She whispered, "I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident." He sneered, slapped her hand away. And then loud enough for every banker, lawyer, and mogul in the room to hear, "Are you completely stupid?" That word, stupid. It cut deeper than he could imagine. Elena had buried her brilliance to keep her family afloat, and now this man was reducing her to nothing more than a waitress with shaky hands. For a moment she almost crumbled. Then something in her straightened. She lifted her chin, locked her gaze on his, and said quietly but firmly, "No, Mr. Mercer, I'm not stupid, but you may have just made a very stupid mistake." Gasps. You could feel the room lean in. And then she did something no one saw coming. Her eyes flicked to the tablet glowing on the table. She'd been listening all night. In perfect sharp German, she corrected him, pointing out that the philosophical principle he kept flaunting in his pitch didn't even mean what he thought it did. She explained the difference between blind obedience and intuitive adaptation, and how he was selling Martin the wrong vision of his own product. Every syllable was a scalpel. Colt's face drained of color. The so-called genius just got dismantled in public by a waitress. Elena didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat. She just stood tall, calm, undeniable. Martin Clay slowly set down his fork. She was only doing her job, you know, and doing it exceptionally well. He turned those steel blue eyes back to Colt, and in that moment, the deal unraveled. When Colt hissed, "You're fired, you're finished," Martin leaned back and chuckled low and dangerous. "You're confused, son. You're a guest at my table, and you will not speak to this young woman or anyone that way again." Then Martin told his own story. A father who worked the docks, a mother who waitressed double shifts with holes in her shoes. "Men richer than you treated her with respect," he said, voice like iron, "because they knew a person's worth isn't measured by who they can step on. It's measured by how they treat those they think are beneath them." Tonight you showed me your character and it's fatally flawed. Finally, he stood. So let's be clear. This deal, over. Dead. He pushed his chair back, reached into his jacket, and handed Elena a business card instead of a tip. Call me, he said softly. We need minds like yours. Then he told the maitre d' to add $5,000 to the bill for her, and he walked out, leaving Colt Mercer to choke on his own humiliation. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Tech wonderkin's $3 billion deal mysteriously collapses. Investors panicked. Colt's empire began to wobble. Meanwhile, in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, Elena sat staring at that card, her father asleep in the next room, medical bills piled high on the table. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. A calm voice answered. Miss Cruz, Mr. Clay has been expecting your call. What followed was nothing short of a resurrection. Martin cleared her father's debts, offered her a role building a new global communications division, told her he valued her mind, not despite her apron, but because of it. Within months, she was leading meetings in Geneva, correcting contracts in flawless French, and commanding rooms where once she carried plates. And Colt Mercer. His company was eventually sold for scraps. Turns out, code can be brilliant, but if character is rotten, everything falls apart. Elena never forgot that night, the humiliation, the courage it forced out of her the moment her life bent in a new direction. She proved that sometimes the smallest act of dignity spoken in the quietest voice can change everything. So let me ask you, what matters more in the end? Brilliance or respect? Have you ever seen someone reveal their true colors in a single moment, good or bad? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this tale struck a chord, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of dignity, and subscribe for more stories that show how character, not money, decides who truly wins.